Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Okay, Ilona Levine, welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe.
Thanks for having me.
I guess we should mention that we connected to Ilona through Andrew Ting. Andrew Ting happens to be the general counsel for the company I work for, and Ilona is also general counsel, which we'll talk about here as we get going. And Ilona, you've got about an hour you can spend with us?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
So Ilona, I grew up in Virginia. I've known Virginia and the East Coast of the United States my entire life. I've never moved to a different country that speaks a different language. You did not grow up in the States. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Moldova, which is a small country. When I say Moldova, nobody knows what I'm talking about, unless you know geography really well, but it's really small. It's probably the size of New Jersey. It's the country between Romania and Ukraine, so it's landlocked. Former Soviet Union.
And was the Soviet Union kind of disbanding at the time that you were growing up?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so I was born, and I think I was about 13 when the Soviet Union fell apart. So I was born during the Soviet Union regime, and grew up kind of seeing that regime and that culture. And then I also saw the transition from the Soviet Union that fell apart and then transitioned to the independent republics, so independent countries. An interesting fact too is I went to law school right after high school, and that was during the time when this new country was setting up all of its laws and the Constitution. So I was in law school studying Constitution that didn't exist as the Parliament was drafting the new Constitution and new laws. So it was interesting times.
Wow, that's amazing. What a cool time to be in law school. I know that, so Ukraine, I've heard, is kind of, there's an East and a West, and a lot of the people in the East are kind of identify more with like being Russian ethnically and culturally. And in the West, it's more, they want to be more part of the Western Europe club. Is there, like, where would you say Moldova lies in that kind of spectrum?
Yeah, so I would say, you have also two camps, but one is more, or at least when I lived there, one was the camp that wanted to be identified with Russia and spoke Russian language and adopted Russian culture, right? Because of immigration from kind of Russia to Republic of Moldova. And then you had other people that were in the camp of Romania, and they wanted to be Romanian and they spoke Romanian. And so you had some people that spoke both languages. I only speak one. Well, I speak two, one barely now, English. I'm just joking. But at that time, I spoke only Russian. My mom spoke Russian, and my dad spoke both Romanian and Russian. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it was more of like Russian versus Romanian.
Wow, cool. And then in the midst of it, like, instead of basically joining one country or the other, Moldova was like creating their own independent government, independent constitution and everything.
Yep.
That's really cool. Paul, I think you're muted.
Apologies, guys. I was interrupted by one of my children who wanted to correct the record. I was born in Germany. She wanted to make sure I made that correct.
There you go.
But I'm not German. I was an American born in Germany. Anyway, so you lived under the Soviet Union for the first 13 years, and then about 6 years as an independent state that was trying to become a solidly sovereign state. Was quality of life better under the Soviet Union, or was it better under a burgeoning country?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So my recollection was that we were always poor and we were always in need of something. So, well, maybe under Soviet Union it was a little different, but I was so little. What my memories are of constant empty shelves in the grocery stores and long lines for food. And lack of electricity, definitely lack of hot water. So you don't just get to take a shower, but you need to boil water to bring the hot boiling water to mix with cold water in the bathtub so you can take a bath. You don't take an elevator. We lived on the 15th floor, so you don't take an elevator because you're afraid you're going to get stuck in the elevator and then nobody comes to get you for hours. So you kind of choose what's the best at that time, whether you're too tired to climb up on the 15th floor, or you want to take a chance and get stuck in the elevator because the electricity will get cut off. Or you really want to make it home for sure, so you do take the stairs. So there are plenty of times when I would just take stairs because the alternative is to get stuck in the elevator, and the elevators were sometimes not very clean, most of the times not very clean. So there was always that kind of the need for something, right? Either it's food or electricity, or hot water, or warmth during winters. I remember times when I had one pair of jeans and I was, a teenager growing, and you try to not eat too little, which was difficult to do because there wasn't much food, or you don't eat too much if you have some food to eat because you're worried that you're going to gain too much weight or lose too much weight, and then that one pair of jeans will no longer fit. So clothing, some basics, right? The necessities that we take for granted here were not there. So I don't remember changing much when you had that changeover. If anything, probably got worse because then you kind of lose the support of a very big country. And what I was 15, and what I decided to do, I took classical dance all through my childhood, and so I said to my mom, we need to make some money, and that was the only, I guess, good thing from what I recall in that change of regime, is that it gave you that freedom to be capitalist, right? To have your own business or to make your own money. So that was unheard of during Soviet Union. So what I ended up doing was going around and putting flyers everywhere, telling people that I'm looking to teach dance to little kids. So I had flyers, and I remember my mom and I went, and it was in the middle of that winter, freezing cold outside. And we were using this glue, trying to glue these flyers all over, and the glue would go all over my hands and freezing. And, and I kept thinking, I just hope that I'll get one child to come so I can teach that child classical dance so I can make some money. I ended up getting a number of kids in the first few months. And then as I really liked it, and I think it showed, and I was good at it. And so as my business was growing, I kept getting more and more kids in my school. So by the time I left, I had 150 kids enrolled in my school where I was teaching them classical dance. I can keep talking about what I also did during that time, but you let me know.
No, classical dance. Are we talking about ballet?
Yeah, ballet.
Okay, so ballet in the classic sense, the tutu on your toes. What's that move called when you're on your toes?
I don't know.
You just did it. Okay, so you became good enough that you were training 150 students. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I was taking, so the other good part about growing up in Soviet Union is you had kind of sports available to everyone, right? And I think about that, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I think about that a lot, right? Because here I have two kids, and both of them, I made sure that they participated in sports, but it's expensive. And why was Soviet Union so good in sports? Well, because it was free to people, and anybody can try a number of different sports and pick a sport and kind of get good at it, right? Because you had a much bigger pool of kids trying different sports. And so you kind of have, your pick of who is good. And I think that's how you kind of have a much bigger pool you can pick from and then train. So I tried different activities growing up, and one of them that I really liked was dance. And so I ended up, going to dance school for a very long time before I decided that that was going to be my business. And really the business was not because I wanted to have a business, because I was also going to law school at that time. It was only because I wanted to make money.
So you were going to law school and teaching over 100 students every
So I
week.
started in high school and kind of built up my business through the last few years of high school. And then in Soviet Union, in Moldova, you had an opportunity to sit for the entrance exams right after high school to law school. And if you pass your entrance exams with a high enough score, it's very competitive. You can go to law school and kind of bypass the college years. So that's what I did. And I also remember that. And, I can also talk about the work ethic that you kind of develop right out of necessity at times. But I remember studying for this entrance exams because I was thinking to myself and studying really hard for hours and hours. I literally had no life for 3 months, sitting in one tiny room, just studying for this entrance exams, because I knew if I don't do well and I don't get into law school, then I was extending the time I have to study. Because my end goal was to become a lawyer. So I didn't want to do also college and then law school. So studying a lot, and ended up getting high enough scores to get in. And my class in law school was, I think, 98 men and 3 women. So it was very male dominated. It was still a male dominated profession back then in Russia, in Moldova.
So in America, you graduate high school typically around the age of 18.
Yeah.
And then you go to 4 years of college. And if you want to be a lawyer, then you can do 3 years of law school after that. So it's 7 years of law school. You had your law degree by the age of 19.
So I didn't get my law degree because I immigrated, but that was the kind of the trajectory. So I graduated from high school at 17. So started my business at around 16, graduated from high school at around 17, and started law school while continuing with the business, so we can have some money and buy food while I was going to law school. The other kind of the other good part, right, was that education was free and they would pay you also. So I was making, if you have good enough grades, so I was also making money kind of going to law school. But the law school and my business were in 2 different parts of the city, and there was no electricity and there were no buses at times. And so I would walk for miles to law school during the day, and then I would walk back all the way to my business so I can teach kids dance. And so by the time I'd get home, I'd be completely exhausted because it was a lot of walking around for miles. And if you're lucky enough to get on the bus, you don't know, it'll break down, right? Because infrastructure is so old. And so that was also really, really difficult, because you really you are so driven and you're determined, but there are all these obstacles that are in your way that you have to also get through.
How many kids did you graduate high school with?
I actually don't remember. It wasn't a big class.
Well, where I'm headed is, how many kids actually skipped college and went straight to law school out of your graduating class?
I don't know. That's a good question too. I think, so this is something funny. I have very vague recollection of certain things, and it's not because my memory is bad, but sometimes because I have so much that I stuff in my brain all the time that certain things escape me. So I honestly don't remember.
But I imagine you were the exception, not the rule, skipping college.
Your words, not mine, but yes.
I appreciate your humility. So you were 19 though when you came to the States, right?
Yes, I was 19, almost 20. Mm-hmm.
And you had done 2 years of law school by that point?
Yeah, 3 years. It's a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So that's why you didn't finish. You did 3, but didn't quite get to the 4th year. And I think when we spoke earlier, you did 2 years in Moldova and then a year in Moscow.
No, all in Moldova. So it was 3 years of law school in Moldova.
So I don't know what's going on. I don't have too much in my head, Ilona. I just have a faulty memory, I guess.
It's all right. I actually never been to Moscow. I really want to go, but I've been to St. Petersburg. Actually, this is the funny fact, Danielle, you asked me about growing up and during the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we went to St. Petersburg, I think I was about 13, for a summer trip, for school trip. And it was just our teacher and our, whatever that was, sixth grade or whatever that was, right, at 13. And we were in St. Petersburg. And it was in June. And it was during Yeltsin and the whole collapse that happened in June of that 1993, or whatever it was, 1990. I can't remember the exact year, but it was during that period. And I remember our teachers thinking we're never going to get back to Moldova because it was such a, it was such a collapse and such an event that we were worried whether we'd be allowed to leave St. Petersburg and go back to Moldova.
But you were able to get back.
Yes.
So what led you, and I think I'm going to want to come back to Moldova, but what brought you to the States?
So I was in school with a boy that apparently really liked me, and he immigrated when he was about 16, and he reached out to me at about 18 or so and wrote me a letter saying that he remembers me and he wants to see if I'd be interested in getting to know him. And so we started, and obviously I did remember him because we went to school together. And so we started talking, sending letters. That was in time of letters, not emails, no text messages, no WhatsApps, no FaceTimes. It was just good old letters. And so, you kind of build that up, right? You wait for the letter and then you get the letter and you're so excited. And then you send another letter and it takes another 3 weeks. So we corresponded for about a year, and then he came to see me and then I came to see him. And then I went back and finished another year of law school while we were talking about getting married. And so I came here in 1996 and we ended up getting married.
Okay, cool. That's a hardcore long distance relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it like I said, I knew him very well. He knew me very well. But yeah, it was a long distance relationship. And I think one of the things that is interesting too is that, faith and how things work out sometimes without even, planning for them. But yeah, so he remembered me, he reached out, but people weren't getting visas from the United States Embassy in Moldova. And for simple reasons. So even if you had somebody to go and see in the United States, do it, because the United States was very worried that people were going to come and stay. So you really had to show what's going to bring you back to Moldova, right? How do we know that you'll be back? And a lot of people couldn't show that. And so they were getting rejected and they weren't getting visas and they couldn't come and they couldn't travel. So travel is very restricted. So another thing that we kind of take for granted in this country is that freedom of travel. So I went in the first time to try and get a visa, and I got the visa, and it was almost like winning a lottery. And I think I was 19, I was in law school, I had my own business, so I had enough proof that I'll be back, and I was back. But it's interesting how things work out at times.
But you eventually came back to the States and stayed. How old were you when you stayed?
Yeah, so I was almost 20. I was 19. And the reason why I went back the second time was because we already had plans to get married and for me to immigrate. But I came by myself with $50 in my pocket because I had, we had no money. So I think we sold my mom's piano so I can have at least some cash in my pocket landing here. And again, we knew the family of my ex-husband, but we weren't close. So you didn't really know, what if they don't meet you in the airport? So I had to have a little cash in my pocket. But they were fantastic. Again, we were 19, both of us, and we had to work really hard because they were recent immigrants themselves. They were here only 3 or 4 years at that time. And so they had no money, we had no money. And so both of us had to really work for everything that we got and what we had, right? And so we all lived in 2-bedroom apartment, I think 6 or 7 of us, and going through the immigration. And I wanted to go to college because I wanted to continue my law school education, but I couldn't get into law school because I skipped college. So I had to reapply and get into college, and I couldn't speak English. One memory I always kind of resort to is thinking of immigration as being an adult, a baby in an adult body, right? So it's almost 20-year-old, but I'm a baby because I can't speak. I can't, the smells are different, the country is different, the sounds are different, the even crossing the intersection is different. Everything is different. So it's like you're took from a different country, an adult body, and dropped in a new country, and you're a brand new baby. You had a question, or I can continue.
No, yeah. How did you learn English?
Yeah, so it was a lot of taking English as second language classes in local high school, and just reading nonstop, and just working from the first moment I landed here. Knock on wood, I've been here almost 25 years. There was not one day I didn't have a job. So literally the first day I landed, I went out, and I had a student visa, which allowed me to work certain number of hours. So I went out and got a job in a grocery store. And then while I was doing that, because you had to pay for even for those classes, right? For English as second language, you have to pay for those. Nobody would pay you for that, or nobody would pay for you to take those classes. So I would kind of pay for my education along the way. So worked full time while I went then to college, and then same thing for high school. I'm sorry, law school.
So when you take an ESL class as an adult, as an immigrant, you speak Russian, but your classmates were speaking other languages. How does the teacher teach English when that teacher doesn't understand the primary languages of the students?
That's one of those things I don't remember.
I'm fascinated by that, right? I mean, there were probably, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 students in that class, and you were probably the only Russian speaker, maybe one of two.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was I guess it was just such an experience that you kind of try to repress because, right, you're going through it and it's painful, and you have to learn the new language. I remember not wanting to say thank you when people would hold the door for me, because I was so afraid that people are going to know that I don't speak the language. So even the simple thing as to say thank you was painful, and a lot of kind of internal worry and anxiety.
How quickly did it take you to feel like you were part of American society?
Sometimes I wonder if I am. No, I'm joking. I don't know. Probably about 5 or 6 years, because I got my citizenship about 6 years after I came here, and that was a painful experience as well, because you have to go through the green card, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and a ton of paperwork, and then you go and you meet with the immigration officer, and and they ask you questions, and you don't know what if you don't get the citizenship or your permanent residency. So that, I think maybe that didn't make me feel like I was part of the country or of the society, right, or a country, until I got my citizenship.
All right, so how long had you been here before you started college?
Oh, I started college the following year, and I remember a discussion with my ex-in-laws at the time, when they were saying, well, do you really want to go back to college? Because as a non-resident, even though it's a city school, you'd be paying twice as much. And I kept saying, I don't care. I'll work around the clock so I can continue my education now rather than wait. I didn't know how long my permanent residency is going to take. It could have been 3 years, could have been 5 years. So I didn't want to wait. And so, I think almost immediately, about a year after I came here.
And were you fluent enough in English at the time to understand the classes?
Yeah, and I had to take, because again, you pay your own way. So I had to take maximum amount of credits to make it to make it cheaper because I remember, I think if 12 credits is, let's say $3,000, but you can take up to 21 credits and it'll still be $3,000, right? Because that's how pricing worked in CUNY, in City University of New York. And so I would take up to 21 credits, even though, I could have just taken 12, but I wanted to get through college as fast as I could for as little money as I could, because I knew I still had to go for the whole law school. So I think I finished college in 2.5 years. I mean, there were some credits that transferred from Moldova, but not many. So I had to kind of take on a lot of credits to finish and graduate in 2.5 years because it costed less money.
So you've had to struggle most of your life, and you're clearly a very hard worker. If you had been born in the suburbs of, say, DC, some nice neighborhood where you had money, you didn't have to worry about food, you didn't have to worry about clothing, do you think you'd be a very different person today?
Probably, and it could have gone one of two ways, right? It's either I would have had a lot more solid of a foundation where I could have built on a lot more, and who knows, maybe I would have been, running for the president today. I don't know, last year, or right, it could have gone complete opposite, and I would have not been successful at all. It's just you really don't know, because I think you are a product of your surroundings, but also some circumstances. And I just knew that for me, you say struggle. Yes, I guess you don't think of it that way when you're in it, right? So I didn't think that I struggled back in Moldova because everybody was like that. And I just knew, okay, well, how do I find a solution? How do I make my life better? Then when I immigrated here, to me, this was just dreamland. There's so many opportunities, and God, you have electricity, you have hot water, and that's already, you have food, that's already not struggle. And then if you think, okay, fine, how can I make my life better? And of course I'll go for that opportunity. And so I'll work harder to get there, but that doesn't mean that I'm struggling, if that makes sense.
It does. So let's go back to Moldova. And it sounds like your family did not have a lot of means. It sounds like everybody you knew did not have a lot of means. How did people actually make money or be able to pay for food and clothing? Besides the dance teacher, like
Yeah.
when you were really small, how did your parents make money?
So when I was really small, everybody was making whatever the government was paying you, right? So that's why there was never a question of like, how much do you make and how much do you make? But I don't know how much you make. Everybody made more or less the same based on your position, right? So my mom was a music teacher, and she made what every music teacher made in Moldova. My father was he had a sales job in a store, and so he was making what the sales clerk was making in the store. And then he was an attorney who kind of went to law school at nights as well. So then he became an attorney, and then he kind of made what they made. But there's also a lot of, I mean, I don't want to be, I don't want to go into ideology here, but there's also, when you do that, you create opportunities for people. And when nobody owns anything, everything is owned by the government, you create opportunities for people to, make more. Right. And how do you do that? Either it's bribes, so you can get yourself a more cushier job, or, it's getting something from, if you're in manufacturing job, you get your friends those extra chickens, or a car, or, so does that make sense? So it's really, it's kind of equal, but it's not.
Yeah. So you either play by the rules and you end up being poor, and barely making ends meet, or you cheat the system and that's how you get ahead.
Yeah. And, I was too little to really understand, or even now sitting here today, know that's what was happening. But I think it was kind of cultural, right? And fabric of the culture. But again, I was too little to really comprehend any of that. All I knew was going back to kind of being 13, 14 and the Soviet Union collapsing, and opportunity that created for people to really become owners of their salaries or of their income.
Do you go back to Moldova often? Are your parents there?
No, my mom moved to the United Kingdom, I want to say about 15 years ago, probably even more than that. And my father passed away. But yeah, so I have not been in a long, long time.
There's no real reason to go back, it sounds like.
No.
Yeah. Do you go to the UK to see your mom a lot?
I haven't been in a while, but yeah, I've been a few times. She comes here before pre-pandemic. She'd come here every year.
And you say here, you're living in the DC area?
I live in Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of the town?
Ashburn?
Ashburn.
Yes.
Ashburn's a nice part of the DC metro area, right?
Yeah, not too far from Reston. So my company's in Reston, and yeah, I live here in Ashburn.
All right. I love the sound of Daniel's voice, so I'm going to stop talking for a while, and we can transition a bit to what you do now, Ilona, and what your company does.
Cool. Yeah, and Ilona, I'm kind of in awe just hearing the way that you described your whole path and the initiative that you had and the drive. And I had one question about it, which is, was there like a cultural, or maybe in your case, like a family emphasis on education? Because the theme that I'm picking up on is that education seems to be really important to you, kind of at every stage.
Oh, wow. Yeah, great question. I don't know. I don't think it was so much the family focus on education. I think I always loved school. I was always good at it. I loved school. So yeah, if you ask my mom, she would say she was a straight C student. I was always a straight A student. But yeah, no, I just loved school.
That's wow. That's a good thing to love. It probably bodes well.
Well, but you know what? One thing I was going to mention, which kind of is maybe answering your question in a way, what my mom did was she introduced me to piano at a very young age, and I sucked at piano. She was a piano teacher. She loved piano. I hated piano, and I was really bad at it. But she made me practice over and over and over and over again, and I would practice every single day for hours and hours and hours. I played piano for 10 years. I was always bad at it, but I was good enough to, perform in concerts, local concerts with other kids, but, good enough to do that, which gave me two things now in retrospect. One is the work ethic. Well, actually, three things probably. One is the work ethic. So you would sit there and you practice and you practice and you practice and you sit there for hours to get something out of it. And goal setting, because you would have a goal. So those are the transferable skills that I transferred into my life and education. And third is I still have fear of public speaking, but I think it would have been worse if I didn't play piano and performed all the time. So the performer in me, helps me with, and I do a lot of public speaking, so it helps me with public speaking.
Wow, that's such a cool little story. I think another thing maybe is that people kind of think that people are innately talented or not, and to an extent that's true. But also in the case of just grinding for 10 years, anybody in the world can get pretty good at piano. So
10,000 hours, right?
Yeah, 10,000 hours. Yeah. So you're currently general counsel of the Internet Society, which is it a nonprofit or an NGO?
It's a nonprofit, and it was formed about 30 years ago by the father of the internet, Win Cerf, and a few others, founding fathers of the internet, and they're still engaged with our community. But yeah, it's we've been in existence for about 30 years, with essentially from the birth of the internet.
Wow. And what would you say, like, what would you say your role is? Like, what do you do kind of in a day-to-day as general counsel?
Yeah, so my role is very similar, I think, to Andrew's, who you may know. As general counsel, we essentially, well, I have two main objectives. One is to help business grow and achieve our mission. Do it in a compliant way, legally compliant way. and be an advisor to the business, so minimize the risk. So it's really just being more strategic and business focused, help us grow and achieve our mission in a legally compliant way and minimize our risk of non-compliance.
Cool. So as far as the Internet Society's case, like they, from what I saw, it seems like there's a sort of a two-pronged goal of growing the internet across the world for people that don't have it, which is, I was really surprised to learn it's more than half of the population just don't have internet access. And then to strengthen it so that it's less susceptible to vulnerabilities, fraud, hacks, like that kind of thing. So I guess, like, how does the business strategy / risk mitigation apply to that sort of kind of like goal or roadmap?
Yeah, and thank you for spending some time learning about the Internet Society. I am also a big believer in the mission, and I had not worked for a nonprofit until I joined the Internet Society back in August of last year, so about 8 months ago. All my career was in a for-profit organizations, for-profit companies. And I do see a big difference between working in for-profit and nonprofit. So I kind of became a, diehard fan of our mission and the Internet Society. And yeah, I obviously, spend a lot of time on action plan and knowing what we do support our mission. So I appreciate you looking at our company and understanding what we do. But yeah, that's a really great summary. We have Internet Strong and we have Internet Grow. And then there are a number of other initiatives that kind of fall somewhere in between. But the way, at the end of the day, it's still a corporation, right? It's still an organization. So what I do is a lot of what I've done in other companies, which is support the organization. So you're straightforward, corporate function, you still have compliance with laws, you still have human resources, and you have a whole bunch of other things that come with just running a business, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. But I also do focus on, and so by doing that, I allow my business folks focus on their mission and focus on their initiatives. So if they want to set up a community network in a particular country, I help them figure out how to do it in a compliant way. If they want to, for example, support a bill and lobby, I help them do it on encryption, or or they want to say something about Section 230, I help them do it in a compliant way. So it's not only the core of running the business in a compliant way, but it also supporting their mission and supporting the work that they do in a compliant way. A lot of what I've been doing here, which I've always worked in a different culture companies, right? Because companies are becoming more and more global. But this is probably as global as it ever got for me, because we are in so many different countries. It could be a day where I work on issues in Ethiopia, and that same day on issues in Germany, and that same day, on our Latin America, and Canada and US, and so it's really very diverse.
Yeah, that's I imagine trying to figure out what the compliant way to do things across all these different countries. That's sounds like a hell of a job, but with a lot of cool variety. Just to ask sort of an obvious question, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, like, why do you think, or why does the Internet Society think that everybody in the world having internet is like an important fundamental thing?
Well, so I don't know if I can answer for the Internet Society. It's a really good question. I think what we do care about is making sure, well, first, that it's the internet is available for as many people as possible, because how can you live in 21st century without internet? But also that the fundamentals of the internet are not broken by different governments or different regulations and rules, because at the end of the day, it's network of networks. And we are working on making sure that some country, by passing some regulation, ends up messing with what's working really well. So it's to your point, right? Again, the growth and the strength of the internet, and so it's making sure that people are connected and are giving an opportunity to connect, because it's internet is what I think the water or other infrastructure is for people, right? We need to have it in this day and age. And then also making sure it's not broken.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's been in my life, and I guess all of our lives, for so long now that it's difficult to imagine being without it, unless we do some kind of like privileged thing, like go on a meditation retreat for 2 weeks and like just could totally isolate ourselves from the world. I have a question.
So difficult. I can't even imagine doing that. But people
like for me, I've had an ongoing battle with social media for a long time now, and now I'm at the point where I don't really have it, and it's really nice, but it still is the internet is still kind of permeating all parts of my life, especially as a software engineer. We like to say that we're just professional Googlers. So so one thing that I've kind of seen or noticed is that, especially in like the digital kind of era, startups and companies are doing things that there aren't really rules written for yet. And privacy, I noticed that some of your work is surrounds privacy, and so there have been like I guess startups that sort of, it's like the Wild West. They say, what, we can do this, there aren't any laws against it, they haven't been written on the books yet. And that sort of innovation mentality keeps like a lot of startups ahead of the legal frameworks that aren't in place yet. So I wonder just if you have thoughts on that sort of dynamic between sort of these like fast moving rule breakers and then the slower moving kind of law behind it, especially from your perspective, which is like you're trying to enable that rule breaking, quote unquote, but you're also trying to prevent legal and ethical violations too.
Yeah, and that's a really great question. I don't know if sorry.
It's we all have families, Ilona. It's all good.
Yeah, there's families. There's a screaming child. Somebody's torturing the kid. No, I'm just joking. I think it's because it's bedtime, and bedtime is not going well in this family.
Oh,
so yeah, that's a really great question. And I think I don't know if rule breaking is the right term. I think it's more of like the rules haven't been written yet for how fast the technology is going and moving. And privacy is such a complicated area of law, because you do have a lot of views, especially different cultural views on privacy. And when it, I know it's similar to other areas of laws, but for example, right, in HR employment, almost all countries understand, harassment and certain rules that are kind of cutting across culturally. I think privacy is very different in that regard, because you have countries that respect privacy, especially European countries where, there is a deep-seated kind of worry about the government watching over individuals, right? And so privacy, individual privacy, is such a fundamental right for Europeans, and it goes back to World War II and in Germany. And then you have U.S. that's a little has a little different approach to privacy, and there isn't that deep-seated worry about watching over an individual. And then you have other countries that have very different approach to privacy, and there is zero privacy, individual privacy. So it's fascinating, but I don't know if if I have any view on kind of just technology moving too fast and then governments kind of taking upon themselves to catch up, and how long it takes.
Yeah, that is a really interesting way to put it. And like that's sort of reflected, those cultural differences are reflected by, I know that the GDPR came out a couple of years ago, and now a bunch of websites you go to say like, please accept our cookie settings, and you actually don't have to, you can decline. And then California as well did the CCPA, I think, which is a similar thing. So yeah, it's a complicated issue.
And there's a Virginia law that's recently passed about 2 weeks ago or so. So now Virginia has its own privacy laws.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I may have violated it several times and not known it.
There is also, speaking of current events, there's this new act that's getting proposed in the Senate called the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale. And briefly, it's like, gosh, there's a company called Clearview AI that basically scraped lots and lots of images of people from Facebook, Twitter, like public social media that people were uploading their pictures to, scraped it, turned it into a facial recognition database, and sold it to government agencies. And this is a bill that's basically, it's not outlawing what Clearview AI is doing, but it is outlawing the government's ability to purchase that data. I'm wondering, like, has this been on your radar, or do you have any thoughts on that?
No. That's interesting. Yeah, I have not been on my radar. I've been so busy with setting up the legal function at the Internet Society. I'm the first general counsel and first internal counsel for the organization. The organization has relied on the outside counsel for all these years, and they brought in the function in-house, which I think is very similar to Andrew. And it's been fun to set that up from scratch. It's my second time doing it. And I've been so focused on that and so busy, because when you're dealing with a 30-year history and being so global and getting onboarded during pandemic, so it was very challenging. I have not paid attention to that, but that sounds really interesting. Yeah, that's probably one of the examples, right, where technology, as you call it, rule breaking, or rule kind of, walking the fine line, and the government catching up. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, no, I'm not. I totally understand. Like I imagine your plate is like more than full with all the amazing stuff that you guys are working on, and it seems like really. Maybe the goal of the Internet Society is a little bit more base level. Like we're just trying to build the infrastructure and get the fundamental stable like security in place so that everybody can use the internet. And I would consider like data privacy maybe like a higher order issue that, it doesn't come in unless you have the internet in the first place. So it's sort of like a first things first thing.
Yeah, and our current CEO has done a lot of job within the organization to focus us and the organization on what is our core mission. Because to your point, internet touches everything, and next thing you know, and we've been kind of, based on my understanding, we've been going in all different directions because the internet touches everything, and it's connected cars, and it's AI, and it's 5G, and it's this, and it's that, and it's privacy. And so I know that the senior executive team and my CEOs had spent a lot of time thinking back to what is the core mission, right? Again, internet is everything, but what is the core mission? And our core mission is the properties of the internet, and making sure that those properties are protected, while also allowing for, or enabling connection for parts of the world that don't have the connection. But yes, the privacy is kind of that extra layer, as is AI, as is, connected world. So we are purposely staying within our lane and not expanding to other parts. But I was very engaged in privacy and very interested in privacy from my previous jobs. And so, yeah, I have the CIPP, which is the certification in privacy. I've stood up a function at another company that was privacy function, but not here.
Nice. Cool. So I have I want to do one more question.
Oh, you're good. Go, do your one.
And I know I'm running up close on time, so I actually have two, but I'm going to let you choose which one you want to answer, Ilona. So the first one is you spent a lot of your career in like corporate companies, big law, like, and then you've only recently in this last year pivoted to the nonprofit world. That change, like what inspired it, how that's been. The second one is just your status as both an immigrant and a woman, reaching these, like, I would consider pretty high levels in the corporate setting, than your executive levels. Like, have you felt that your immigrant status or being a woman has like affected that, or has changed the way that people have treated you or anything like that?
Oh, wow. So do I have to choose the question? I like them both. Well, I'll answer the first one, and then if we have enough time, I can answer the second one too.
Go ahead and answer both,
please. So the first question about the pivoting to the nonprofit and what attracted me to that. Before this job, I had a general counsel position at China Telecom Americas, and it's a U.S. subsidiary of China Telecom. And we worked a lot on internet security, and being a U.S. subsidiary of a Chinese company, there was a lot of focus on making sure that we demonstrate that the service was secure and that the internet was secure. And so, in connection with that job, I learned about the Internet Society, because the Internet Society has this initiative called Manners, and Manners is essentially a observatory, and has observatory for ISPs and cloud providers and others that are participants in that initiatives, in seeing kind of the health of an ISP and the internet security. And so, not going to go into too much detail, but the company China Telecom America spent a lot of time on making sure that it reaches that point where it can become the Manners participant. And so, in doing that work, I've learned about the Internet Society, and I just thought it was so cool to have this entity that did all that work and allowed for that kind of, very country agnostic and, entity agnostic way for really focused on technology. And the more I learned about the Internet Society, the more interested I became in the company. And then the position opened up, and I applied thinking there's no way I'm going to get a job because I don't have any experience with nonprofits. And I think I did well enough in the interviews where they were interested enough in me in offering me the job. And so I've had a fantastic experience here, and really learning about the organization, really seeing how the mission can, really affect people and companies. So that's answer to first one. Answer to the second one. To be honest with you, I've never had anybody ask me that question. So it's a really good question. I think people kind of assumed that being an immigrant and being a woman, that maybe there were things that have not gone my way. So nobody really asked me that question. And to be honest with you, I really don't think I ever focused on it. Meaning, I don't think I've ever dwelt. There were plenty of jobs that I applied for that I didn't get. Were there opportunities for advancement within certain companies that I might not have gotten, that I had but did not get because I was a woman or an immigrant? Maybe. I don't know. Because I don't think I ever dwelled on it, or I used that as an excuse to say to myself, well, I didn't get it because I'm a woman, or I didn't get it because I'm an immigrant. I always thought to myself that, well, people will not give me the job, or they will not advance me because of my accent, right? I'm still very, very, very mindful of my accent. And I feel like people right away know I'm not from here, right? So I think I put that pressure on myself, and then I surprise myself when I get a job, or I surprise myself when I get the opportunity. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, if I didn't get a certain opportunity or I didn't get the advancement because of my status or because of my immigration status or because I'm a woman, it's their loss. So there you go.
That's the best answer possible. I love it. So you mentioned manners. Is manners a governing body, or is it more of a certification sort of process?
Yeah, so it's an initiative within the Internet Society, and it's self-governing. So you have a collection of ISPs and companies that are very interested in making sure that they meet certain standards to be admitted into this kind of self-governing body. But yeah, it's not a certification. It doesn't have any stamp of approval. It's more of well, these are the standards that you need to meet to show the world that your connections are secure, that your BGP routing is, secure. Because BGP is, as you may know, is, a lot of it is, or could be, human error. So that's what it is.
Got it. So when I was pointing at myself earlier, and sorry for being obnoxious about that, when you're trying to grow and strengthen the internet, say in a place like Ethiopia, you're dealing with Ethiopian laws. You're also dealing with American laws because the Internet Society is based here. I'm assuming it's based here.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealing with American laws.
Yes.
Are there any other laws at play in my Ethiopia example?
So we always have to comply with the U.S. laws because, as you mentioned, we are a U.S. nonprofit. So that's our baseline. We have to comply with all U.S. laws. If there's a certain initiative in a certain country, or you have employees in that country, or you have, you're putting up a webinar or whatever it is, right? And there's certain implication of laws in that particular region, you also have to do your research and make sure that you apply with that region's laws as well.
Okay, got it. And so you have a giant clock behind you in your background today. So it's wonderful because it lets me know what time it is. And we had talked about doing this for roughly an hour. So I guess the last thing I would love for you to talk about is your family today.
So since you mentioned the clock, I have to tell you a funny story about the clock, and then I will tell you about my family. So the clock is an interesting story, and it makes it for a nice icebreaker when people ask, well, is this the virtual background is a real clock? It is a real clock. And as you know, we all been working from home, and I've been working from home for a number of months in the basement before I realized, well, this is not going anywhere. So I have to have a little office because, I'll be here 10, 12, 14-hour days. So we had a spare bedroom, and I said, I don't have the time or the ability or really, the desire to decorate this room. So I hired this lady, and I said, listen, I only have one requirement. I need a clock, and the clock needs to be quiet. The reason why I assumed that she would have understood what kind of clock I need was because I'm constantly running late for conference calls. And so it would have been great to have a little clock that I can see instead of being obnoxious looking at the clock on the screen. So I can have a little clock to see what time it is, so I can tell people, hey, I'm running late for the next call. So she did this reveal, right? She opened the door. Ta-da! And I have a clock. The clock is huge and is behind me, and so I have no idea what time it is. It is quiet, I have to say. But then I thought, well, maybe she's being passive aggressive on my behalf, because as you said, then you can see what time it is, and you would know that you ate way too much of my time. I'm only joking, but
I'm not picking up on passive aggressive, Ilona.
So my family is married. I have 2 kids, both boys. I say I'm always mentally and physically exhausted because I have a 21-year-old who keeps me mentally exhausted, and I have a 6-year-old about to be 7 who keeps me physically exhausted. And that's my family. And then I have my mom who lives in UK.
Very cool. Well, Ilona, I love your accent. You should not worry about your accent at all. It's a fantastic accent, and you have a fantastic story, and I'm very appreciative for you joining us tonight. And I'm really glad I know Andrew, because Andrew knows a lot of really cool people.
Well, and I appreciate you giving me the time and asking me some really great questions. If anything, it gave me the opportunity to reflect back and really connect a lot of dots. And thank you for being prepared and asking me some great questions and taking an interest, because I think what you do is kind of really cool. You take the time out of your lives to learn about other people, and hopefully others will listen. And yeah, it's great.
I thank you so much for sharing that sentiment. We really do enjoy learning a lot of people's stories, and yours is certainly one of the more fascinating we've learned.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. You want to stop
Definitely
recording?
inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.